Japan does not always look like a housing crisis. From the outside, it can look orderly, quiet, functional. But inside, the crisis feels like something colder than price. It feels like permission. Because in Japan, housing can reject you before you even speak. Not with an argument, with rules, with requirements, with a polite no that arrives as silence. You can see it in the rituals people accept as normal. Key money, reikin, deposit, shikikin, a guarantor company, renewal fees, koshinryo. These are not just words, they are gates. And when the gates stack on top of each other, a home stops being a home. It becomes an obstacle course you have to pay to enter. That is Japan's signature pain. Not only the cost of living somewhere, the cost of being allowed to live anywhere at all. A young worker opens a listing and the monthly rent looks barely possible. Then the real price appears. Deposit, key money, agency fees, guarantor fees, move-in costs that feel like punishment for needing shelter. And suddenly, the apartment was not barely possible. It was impossible from the start. So people adapt. They go smaller. Not small like minimalism, small like surrender. A room where the bed touches the desk. A desk that touches the kitchen. A kitchen that feels like a corner. A life folded into a rectangle. A loft bed is not a design choice. It is what happens when adulthood is forced into a space that was not built for a future. A wall desk isn't minimalism. It's the last surface left where your life can function without sitting on your bed. Storage walls aren't style. They're evidence. Evidence that the space cannot hold a normal life, so the life must fold. These aren't solutions, they're coping, because the alternative isn't something better. The alternative is being shut out. And the shutout feeling doesn't only come from money, it comes from screening. From the moment you realize you're not applying for a home, you're applying to be judged. Some landlords want a certain type of tenant. Some agencies want the safest, simplest file. Some renters learn to hide parts of themselves just to avoid rejection. Because in a tight market, easy becomes valuable. And when easy becomes valuable, power shifts. The renter becomes quiet. The renter becomes grateful. The renter becomes afraid to be difficult. Afraid to complain about mold. Afraid to ask for repairs. Afraid to admit the truth. This place is too small, too expensive, too fragile. Because in a competitive market, the fear is always the same. If you speak up, you can be replaced. Now here is the shock factor that makes people feel sick. Japan is often described as a country with a large number of vacant homes. Official housing surveys report millions of empty properties. But vacancy doesn't mean availability. A vacant home in the wrong place does not help the person who needs to be near work, near school, near hospitals, near transport. So you get a cruel paradox, a country with many empty homes, and ordinary people still trapped in tiny rooms, long commutes, and unstable contracts. That is when the crisis becomes psychological. Because it teaches you a dangerous lesson. It is not that there are no homes, it is that there are no homes for you. And that lesson changes behavior. People delay relationships, they delay marriage, they delay children, they delay leaving home. Not because they do not want a life, Because housing has turned life into a calculation. The calculation never ends. If I move, can I afford the fees again? If I lose this contract, can I get another landlord to accept me? If I complain, will I be marked as trouble? If I stay quiet, will I at least keep the address? This is what powerlessness looks like in a calm country. Not chaos, a quiet shrinking. So why does it feel like this? Not slogans, not blame, just forces that stack together until the pressure becomes normal. First, demand concentrates. Opportunity concentrates in certain corridors and metro areas. Jobs, education, services, transport. Too many people need the same space, and the space that is truly livable and connected becomes the prize. Second, the rental system adds friction. Move-in costs and screening create barriers that hit hardest when you have the least savings. Even if the monthly rent is possible, the entry price can destroy you. Third, supply does not match need. Empty homes exist, but not where life is. And building, redevelopment, and conversion take time. While the system moves slowly, people's lives do not pause. Fourth, once housing becomes fragile, people stop moving. They cling to what they have, even if it does not fit anymore. And when mobility dies, opportunity dies with it. Now people ask the question they always ask when the pressure becomes unbearable. What is the government doing? On paper, Japan has policies aimed at addressing the empty home problem, encouraging renovation, reuse, and safer management of vacant properties. There are also public housing systems and local programs that can support lower-income households, though access can vary by area and by eligibility. There are broader urban planning and redevelopment efforts intended to renew housing stock and improve safety and energy performance. So, yes, plans exist, programs exist, frameworks exist, but people do not live on paper. They live in outcomes. And the outcome many residents recognize is still this: the entry costs are still brutal. The screening still decides who gets to live where. The tiny room still becomes the default for ordinary life. And the fear still sits under everything, because a home that you can lose is not a home. Now add the pressure point people feel but do not want to talk about in a hateful way. Japan has foreign students, foreign workers, and a growing non-citizen population in certain areas. Some foreign residents report additional barriers in renting, including being rejected by landlords, which can push demand into a narrower slice of the market. When the overall market tightens, any added demand at the lowest cost end can increase pressure in shared housing and cheaper rentals in the places where newcomers can realistically enter. That does not explain Japan's housing pressure by itself. Japan's housing crisis is bigger than one group. It is concentrated demand, system friction, and a market that punishes anyone without savings. But when people are already stretched, any extra pressure becomes more visible, and people feel it. And when people feel it, they become exhausted. They become done. Because they expected something simple. A job should lead to stability. A home should be the base layer of life, not a maze of fees and approvals, not a tiny room you pay just to enter. not a system where your life can be filtered out on paper. So here's the question that should make people uncomfortable. If housing in Japan is a gate you cannot climb without savings, approval, and silence, who gets to live a full life? And what happens to everyone who keeps being pushed into smaller and smaller rooms? Subscribe to follow this series, country by country. This is not one place. It is a pattern. If this felt real, hit like. And tell me in the comments, what was the first thing housing took from you? Money, time, dignity, or the feeling that you are safe? Subscribe, because the next country is worse in a different way.